control screen on the new control system. I'll go through the basic functions of that. Basically, everything over here is an on-off control or an indicator. Everything over here are things you can change values on. So I'll go through these first. This first button is pump. It simply comes on when the pump button is depressed. Doesn't do, you can't hit it. The next button is the sequence. The normal sequence of the press is to feed and then punch. If we push this button, it will punch and then feed. The next button over here is ready. When I push it, it will come on for about 8 seconds. If we're in the automatic mode, during that time you can hit the palm switches and the press will cycle. If that is not lit in the auto, and it's in the auto mode, the press will not cycle if you hit the palm buttons. Okay, the next row over, this is an indicator light to say that it's in single cycle, which is simply one feed and one punch and then wait for another entry. The manual mode, the press will cycle as long as the operator's hands are in the palm switches. So when you want to run, it'll feed punch all day unless you have a pre-programmed stop set in, as long as the palm switches are in. Automatic, simply with the ready button, if I hit the palm switches and the pump was on, it would feed and punch all day long unless I have something pre-programmed in to tell it to stop. Otherwise, I hit the stop button. The next row down is the jog button. This relates to the feed. If I push this button, as long as I push it, the rollers turn. The next button over is an index. If I push this button, the rollers turn at whatever the progression setting is at. Reverse feed simply tells the rollers to turn backwards. The next row is knockouts on. You have the knockouts on here that push the parts out. If you have that turned on, so it's on now. Every time I cycle, the knockouts will fire. This is the manual knockout button. This button over here is for a function you actually don't have. This would push the stacker, which is a table that fits underneath the knockout table. That would be manually moving it in and out. The next row is we're going to tell the unit to stop on a batch count. We either turn that on or off, and I'll go over programming that on over on the right side. If that's off, the batch setting doesn't matter. When you reach a batch count, you have to hit a batch reset to restart the machine. The stacker, again, that goes with the stacker in. There's a stacker count, which could be used as a box count. If that's on and I have a number programmed for the stacker, it will feed and punch that many times and then stop. Okay, this button here is the next screen, which is for the job storage. These two buttons here relate to what we call skip cycle. If you want to run strips through the material, you can put it in skip cycle stop, and if I'm in there, whatever I've programmed in for the number of punches per strip, it will run that number, and then the number that I have programmed in for the indexes, it will run that number, and then it will stop. The purpose of that, second portion of the index is simply to get the material out of the machine and also give the operator time to get the next strip in. The front roller also will automatically open when that reaches the index portion. If it's in the stop skip cycle auto, it'll do the same thing, but instead of stopping after the pre-programmed indexes, it will start the cycle over again. Okay, moving over to the right screen, these first 4 items relate to the feed rate and distance. Distance and progression are synonymous with each other. But the first one is the base speed. The base speed is how fast the rollers start turning. It will take a pre-programmed number of steps at the base speed, which is 500 steps per second. And then it will ramp up to the next item, the max speed. And it will max speed is set for 5,000, so at 5,000 steps per second, that's as fast as we've programmed to go. Now these are all operator selectable, and they are also, some presses will be able to accept higher numbers than others. The acceleration deceleration is the next. It's set for 100. If you lower that number, it will get to the top speed faster than if you raise the number. So it says, okay, I've taken my base speed steps, now I'm going to go to the max speed. And that's simply a factor of how long does it take to get there. The distance right now I've set for 6 inches. That's a good one to change, so I'll use the arrow key. And let's just say I want a smaller part, so I'm going to reprogram that for 3.000. And I need to hit enter before that takes hold. So now if I tell it to take an index, it will just feed the 3 inches instead of the 6. The next switch down is tons. It's set for 10 tons right now. If I want to change that, I will just go in and hit 5.0, sets it for 5 tons. When I hit enter, that is what the control is programmed to respond to. Now there's another piece that goes with this. Besides setting it electronically, whenever you set that, you also need to set the relief valve. And you would release this knob, back it off, and then turn it in, trip the press, turn it in until it trips. And then you lock the knob back down. If you do this every time, when you set the tonnage, you also change this, which is the way we recommend. The press cannot hit higher than the tonnage that you programmed in. The ultimate control is with the relief valve. Okay, the next one down is stroke. It's set for 0.3. What that is once the ram comes down and hits pressure, it's a factor of time. So we're allowing it to come up for 0.3 seconds. So if I want to change that, and generally it will be a seconds that you want to, or point number. I'm going to change that to 0.25 seconds and press enter. Any of these numbers are changed the same way.